You're listening to Luxury Insider, a podcast that highlights the hottest trends and innovations in the world of luxury, hosted by Invennt Luxe. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss an episode. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
So joining me for today for podcast is Kerry Bannigan, who is the Executive Director of Fashion Impact Fund. So welcome to the podcast, Kerry. Can you give us a little introduction to yourself and your organization?
Hi there, thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of the Fashion Impact Fund. And in short, the Fashion Impact Fund is all about supporting women entrepreneurs that are transforming fashion for people and planet. We look at this through an educational initiative lens, where we want to see the initiatives that are out there that are accelerating the fashion industry's transition to a place that can evolve to be an equitable, inclusive, and regenerative fashion ecosystem. We have three pillars that we look at, such as knowledge, media, and skills. And we want to ensure that we are supporting and providing resources to women-led programs that are transitioning the fashion industry to be a better sector all round.
Right. Thank you so much, Kerry. I can see a lot of similarities between Invennt Luxe and the Fashion Impact Fund. So Invennt Luxe is a management consultancy company focusing on apparel, fashion, and luxury sector. We help a diverse range of clients within the sector to finance their innovation and boost profits. So innovation and sustainability are all we care about. Right. So today we'll be diving into many interesting topics, such as the struggles of female entrepreneurs in the fashion industry, fashion sustainability and greenwashing, and fashion businesses in the post-COVID time. Right, so already have so many in the plates. Shall we get started?
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently you have been in the industry for quite a long time, and you have been actively advocating for social goods, for accelerating the industry transition. And I'm pretty sure you have met so many great people and inspiring stories. So just want to get to know more on that part. So what are the common struggles you have seen for women entrepreneurs in this fashion industry?
Yeah, so with the fashion industry, and I'm sure it goes across many other sectors, as I see myself, and I've been on this journey for 15 years, is you see similarities in female entrepreneurs, the lack of amplification that is out there for their work and their stories, and then also the money, whether it's from venture capitalists, whether it's grants, whether it's scholarships. There is a lack in access to support in media marketing and money. And I think that that continues to happen, and the fashion industry is not immune to this. And what we are seeing, though, is especially in after the pandemic, and as we sit where we are now, we saw that women were really leaned on as well as failed in the pandemic. And now when we're looking at rebuilding and what does that look like and how can we do better, we have to ensure that female entrepreneurs that are absolutely leading, there are solution strategies and systems in place ready to go to make the industry better. But we have to ensure that females, especially female entrepreneurs, have a seat at the table. And there's a couple of statistics that I just want to share that kind of really sit with me. And when we were devising what we wanted to do and who we needed to support more, these were three stats that really sat with us. And the Global Media Monitoring Project report from 2020 to 2021 shared that only 25% of the persons heard, read about, or seen in newspaper, television, and radio news are women. And additionally, that only 35% of activist news sources in the media are women. And to me, that is just shocking, because I don't know about you, but when you think about those that have got so much change that they could bring about in the fashion industry, you immediately are drawn to so many women leaders. And yet there's that struggle for them to be referenced and credited in media. And media plays a huge part in the narrative here for businesses, for finance, and for citizens to learn about the work that women are doing.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I picked up several points you mentioned. The lack of funding is totally the issue for women entrepreneurs across all industries. And as you mentioned, statistically, we still don't have enough women entrepreneurs, and it's just so difficult. You have to pave your own path in the male-dominated world, and I'm sure that's where fashion impact funds uh, have such an important role in this matter. I'm sure it's very important for women entrepreneurs to have the confidence to seek for the right network and don't be afraid to ask for help. And yeah, so for those challenges you mentioned or struggles for women entrepreneurs, what would be the practical solutions, or how can they overcome those challenges as individuals, do you think?
I think actually it's not based on the individual. I think we're sitting in a very broken system. And what we need to do is call on industry leaders, governments, and so forth that can ensure that there is more access to resources for women entrepreneurs in the space. They need to be able to invited to showcase their work. If it's capital that they need, they should be having a seat at that table and being able to find out more about how they can pitch, how they can share, how they can open their work and deck for investment, or when there's grants going on, what does that look like? And so there's so much on this. And as an individual, what you are finding is that women entrepreneurs end up getting money from family and friends, or they even put it on their own credit card, or they use their own savings, or if they're at the beginning of their journey, they are working a paid gig by day and then trying to grow their business idea at night. And so the reality is sustainability is not just about providing sustainable services and solutions for the world to be better and the sector to be better. We have to be able to actually sustain ourselves. And that includes finances to look after our well-being and to, be okay and to pay the bills and not be working into the extreme hours of the night. We're in this society that you get rewarded for burning out. And we see women entrepreneurs doing that so much. And so, yes, individuals can network and reach out and connect with people, but we actually need to see society and the system do better by women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Sorry, just 1 second. Yeah, I totally agree what you just said. It's not only up to the individuals to take actions. It's all we also need those important figures and for government and everyone to play their part to fix this broken system. The reason I mentioned individual, because I thought there might be some mental barriers as well, as in it's often the case women entrepreneurs has to define the social expectations, because even it's 2022, right? We still live in a society when women are stereotyped as the ones who are meant to stay at home and give their all attention and effort to family and to house chores. And it's often looked down upon for them when they try to seek for their dreams or establish the businesses.
It's an interesting point you bring up there and about the mentoring. And I think we're in a space of heavy mentoring is available, but there's a lack of money, media, and marketing available. And they're the things that are needed to get these business ideas off the ground and sustained and into growth.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So shall we move on to the next topic, sustainability? So as we all know, fashion industry is quite polluted, and it's one of the most polluted industry in the whole world. And there are many environmental problems caused by the textile or fabric manufacturing process, such as air pollution, water pollution, And just we have so many unwanted or secondhand clothes that being dumped to the landfill on a daily basis. So there are many problems need to be solved. But I feel like in recent years, sustainability has been brought up a lot. It's like every brand is talking about this. I'm pretty sure some of them are really doing an impressive work, but in the meantime, some businesses they just altered their marketing language to meet the expectations. Yeah, for some reasons, like the new generation, they care more about social justice and the planet. So to make sure those consumers will buy their products, they just talk smartly, but actually they're not being sustainable, which is what we call greenwashing. So just want to ask, how can we identify that? Is there any criteria for us to determine whether a brand is being sustainable or they're just greenwashing the customers?
Great question. You have a lot of good points there where you talk about the marketing communications doing very smart words placed, but is the action and the work actually there behind the scenes? And, just to emphasize what you were saying there about the fashion industry, it is responsible for vast negative environmental impacts, but we also can't ignore the negative social exploitation as well. And the fashion industry causes so much damage, from climate change to exploited labor, gender inequality, poverty, textile waste, water pollution. Unfortunately, the list just goes on and on. And when you're talking about greenwashing, it's, as citizens, or brands like to dub us customers, is they are all this talk around being purposeful brands and what does this look like? And, to note if a brand is sustainable, let's take a step back, and that it is not a brand criteria. It's not a marketing term as it has become. It's actually a value and a principle. And what we need to look at, when it's very hard for a citizen to be responsible for this by themselves, when there's so much lack of education and truth and knowledge out there about these brands. And so, this goes from fabrics and packaging to workplace environments to fair pay and labor rights. There's so much to be considered when you want to look at a criteria of a brand being sustainable. And as you mentioned, there are some brands that are doing fantastic work, that they are implementing sustainability as a value and principle in the DNA of their brands. But when you actually look, this is a lot of small, independent brands that can understand their supply chain. And that's not to take away, there actually are a few larger that are doing good with this. But we've also got to look at it like this. Responsible production is a very ironic situation for the fashion industry, as this is a sector relying on perpetual purchasing and consumption. So you have to be aware that brands that are producing high volumes cannot ever be holistically responsible. And this is something that has to be considered. And also, when there's the once a year, the conscious collections that are released, or look at the collaborations with an influencer. And there's a lot of this, and I think it's so confusing. And so there is not yet this one blanketed criteria. And I think we sit in this extremely gray area right now, very murky, very complex, and yet so vague on purpose, so that people can get away with so much regarding being a part of this sustainability conversation. And it's confusing on purpose too. And it's a lot for citizens and consumers to take on board. And I do think that this is where we're starting to see a lot of the role of legislation and policy and laws coming into play.
Yeah, that's right. I think on top of that, traceability is the foundation. Like you can claim whatever you are doing, but if you don't provide the traceable details, if you don't let the consumers to know what's going on behind the curtain, you can't really claim yourself to be sustainable. I think that's my takeaway. Right. So you mentioned. Um, so is there any new sustainable technology or regulation that excites you? Follow up on the question.
Yeah, so there's a few items there. So when you talk about technologies, and I want to look at this from a design perspective, and there's a designer based in London. Anyango Mapinga, and she has been designing in 3D. And this was to look at how to combat waste of samples. And then there's also inclusive sizing that comes into that. And one of your other guests here, Jenny Holloway, who is really pushing the needle on the manufacturing side with technology with Cornid, is looking at how you can print and what does this look like and how can we start evolving to looking at on demand and coming away from the waste of chemicals and samples. I mean, the list goes on. Where I'm extremely excited away from technology is regulations and legislation. And there's quite a few going on at the moment. There's the Fashion Act in New York City. There's the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. Then also there's the UK Green Claims Code. And actually the equivalent to that in the US is being led by Hilary Jockmans of Politically in Fashion, where she's pushing for the US to update the Green Guide since 2012. And so when you look at all of this happening right now, to me, as someone that's been in this space for quite some time, it's incredible to now see that policy and legislation is starting to have a proper seat at the table, and that these are major conversations that are happening now. But what we're going to have to ensure is, as these legislations are coming into play, that they are equally accounting for environmental, social, and economic impact, that they're looking at the whole value chain of what is going on here of the fashion system. And I think what's going to be even more exciting as we start to see these legislations happening regionally, what can we do to ensure that fashion that's extremely global can have blanketed regulations? Because we'll find very quickly that fashion brands will just move to the region where they can get through loopholes.
Yes, that's absolutely right. But overall, I think it's very good to see that consumers started to wake up and really put pressure on the value chain. And in the meantime, as you mentioned, the movement is taking place in different brands or countries, and yeah, everyone is doing their part to make this world much better. And I'm very interested into the contact you mentioned. Maybe that's one of friends who's doing this 3D innovation on garments. Yeah, it would be great if we can make a connection and have a discussion with her as well.
I would love that. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Right. I noticed we're a little bit short on time, but I think there's a lot of takeaway for me to digest, because I personally learned a lot from our conversation, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode as well. Did you have a great time?
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
That's awesome. Right. So I think on that note, we'll have to wrap up the conversation. And yeah, wonderful. So to all our listeners today, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any episode. Right. Thank you so much, Kerry. Let's continue this conversation offline. And I hope you stay well. Let's keep in touch and see you next time.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Luxury Insider. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Like, comment, and share it with someone who'd find value in it too. Head on over to our website at www.inventtluxe.com to learn more, and we'll see you on the next episode.